When you drop a stone into water, it makes a tiny splash. But then the ripple begins. Waves radiate outwards, reaching places the stone never intended to touch. A spark ignites a wildfire. A snowflake triggers an avalanche. And one bold statement becomes a movement. That's the power of the ripple effect.
In 2024, a TikTok user made her waves when she posted a video stating, "I'm not a feminist. I can actually cook." And women everywhere heard it and responded. Social media was flooded with videos of women showcasing their talents that extended far beyond the kitchen: building, designing, leading, performing, teaching, and inventing. And from that moment, Watch Her Cook was born.
Watch Her Cook, derived from the phrase "let them cook," is a podcast that celebrates women who've defied the odds, shattered expectations, disrupted the status quo, and changed the world. These women didn't just break barriers, they rewrote the script. And in an unexpected plot twist, became the masterminds, not just the victims, in tales of crime and intrigue. Empowered women empower the world, and there is no better time than now to share the stories of the women of our past to inspire the women of our present.
We'll be releasing new episodes every Wednesday.
Welcome to Watch Her Cook.
Hello, everyone. I'm Cassie.
And I'm Danielle.
You may know us from National Park After Dark, a podcast that explores the true crime tales of the outdoors, which, don't worry, is not going anywhere.
But we want to officially welcome you to Watch Her Cook, a podcast dedicated to sharing the incredible lives of women who have taken their power back throughout history.
Yes, and this podcast has been a long time coming because if you are coming over here from National Park After Dark, you know that we tell a lot of stories about different people throughout history, but we surround it with national parks and national forests and all that good stuff. And during our research, we kept coming across stories specifically of women that we were so interested in telling, but never quite fit the narrative of these outdoor wild spaces that we know and love. But these stories just felt so important that we were almost pulling our hair out of how do we tell this on National Park After Dark? And we kind of came to this conclusion that we can't tell it on National Park After Dark. It doesn't fit, and that this actually deserves its own podcast. And thus, Watch Her Cook has been born, and you are here for the very first episode.
Yeah, so it's been cooking for a long time.
Look at you.
And I guess the question that we should answer right off the bat is why now? If we've been thinking of this for years and just have this running list going that we've been compiling over time, like why did we decide to launch Watch Her Cook now? Now is the best time to highlight stories of women throughout history and into the present to remind us all of the power of women and the differences that women can make and continue to make. And during a time where not just here, US based, because that's where we live, but throughout the world, that there are a lot of women who are going through uncertain times and shaky times and times where the future is unknown. And there's a lot of questions around what's next for women, what is in store for us. And while we aren't here to necessarily answer that, we're here to give insight into stories of the past that will really bolster our present.
Right. And part of what really inspired this podcast too is specifically, I was listening to a lot of true crime stuff. And don't get me wrong, I love true crime, but I was noticing this narrative that I was really getting tired of. And that was that women are victims.
Mm-hmm.
Every time I tune into a true crime episode, you know, women are the victims of something. And I was getting really tired of that narrative because women are so much more than that. You know, we're not just victims of circumstance or crimes or whatever that may be. Women are strong, they're smart, they're intelligent, they can get things done, and they do and have. And unfortunately, throughout history, sometimes that's not remembered or acknowledged at all.
Yeah, so everything might not be super nice and shiny and have like the best bow at the end, but We wanted to share stories of all kinds from women throughout history, throughout the world, and just let the stories speak for themselves, whether they're leading the charge or toiling away in the lab or maybe doing some shady dealings. But we just want to showcase them for all that they
We're
are.
going to dive into all of it, no matter what it is. And today we're really excited because this particularly has been a story that has been on our list of how we could get this onto National Park After Dark, which was just never going to happen, but has been in our mind and we've been wanting to cover. And this is a mix of empowering women and also some darker things. So it's a good episode to start off on. And today we've got not one, not two, but three women that we are going to highlight.
That's right. Today we are telling you all about Hannie Schaft and sisters Truus and Freddie Oversteegen, who were resistance fighters during World War II in Nazi-occupied Netherlands. They were recruited as teenagers after the Nazi invasion in 1940 and went on to carry out bold missions like hiding Jewish people, guiding children to safe houses to escape deportation, smuggling weapons, and courageously luring German soldiers into secluded places to take them out. Their courage and cleverness were crucial in the fight against the Nazis.
Before diving into the story, let's talk more about where this all took place. During World War II, the Netherlands were a neutral party. Initially, the Dutch didn't want to pick a side. They weren't planning on getting involved in the conflict at all. Because the Netherlands were not taking the side of the Germans, they ended up becoming invaded by them, leaving the Dutch no other option than to become involved with the war, and thus began their fight against the Nazis.
The Netherlands was occupied by the Nazis for about 5 years. During that time, the Dutch resistance formed, groups of courageous people who opposed the regime and fought back in whatever way they could. It was one of the darkest times in history, and during it, our three women, Truus, Freddie, and Hannie, became key figures in the resistance.
But let's backtrack a little bit and talk about how Freddie and Truus grew up, because this is pertinent to the story. They were raised in Haarlem, a city just outside of Amsterdam, by their single mother. Their mom had strong socialist beliefs and felt passionately about standing up for those who were oppressed. She was a communist who took Jewish refugees into their home during the war, even though this put them all at risk.
When the Nazis invaded the Netherlands in 1940, that sense of justice was deeply ingrained in Truus and Freddie. They were still young. Truus was only 16 years old, and Freddie was just 2 years her junior, but they were joining their mom in distributing anti-Nazi pamphlets. By 1941, the Haarlem resistance group had taken notice. A commander knocked on their door and asked if he could recruit the sisters to join the fight. It wasn't until later that they discovered their duties would include sabotaging bridges, blowing up railway lines that were vital to the Nazi supply chain, and even shooting Nazis, some of the most dangerous missions in the resistance.
The girls' age and youthful appearance made them unlikely suspects and allowed them to move discreetly. Among the most dangerous tasks Truus faced was being assigned to seduce an SS officer. These were members of the Schutzstaffel, a paramilitary organization that was responsible for some of the most cruel acts during the Nazi regime. They were assigned with enforcing Nazi policies, maintaining internal security, and running concentration camps.
The resistance relied on women to get close to high-value targets like this, leveraging their charm to lure them away from their positions. Once they were in secluded areas, other members of the resistance would wait for the right moment to ambush the SS officers and shoot them. They called these missions liquidations.
This wasn't something the sisters relished in. Truus expressed that, quote, it was tragic and very difficult, and they cried about it afterwards. She explained how she did not feel it suited them and that it never suits anybody unless they are real criminals. I couldn't help but, when hearing this story, notice their ages and that they are being sent. They're children. They're 16 and 14, and they're being sent to seduce Nazis, to seduce them and to kill them as teenagers.
Yeah, and even if you're not the one pulling the trigger, like we just kind of set the scene that sometimes there were other members of the resistance kind of laying in wait, and that was their role, it's still, you have a hand in it, and that's heavy. You know, even if you think you're doing the right thing, and clearly they're part of this resistance group that is fighting evil, it's still taking a life or being a part of taking a life. And that must have been really, really difficult.
I think it really brings forth and sets the scene of how evil this time was, because if a 16-year-old and a 14-year-old are able to seduce grown men Nazi
Oh my God.
soldiers, that's just a whole nother thing where it's just all of it is really hard and it's really awful what's going on. And the fact that they're recruited and they're doing this and they're fighting for the Jewish people in their country and for the Netherlands at such a young age is really incredible. And I feel like I could say that so many times, but it just blows me away how young they were.
Yeah, that's especially pertinent to this story too, because they're going to go on to do a lot of other things, but let's just all keep in mind their ages. What were you doing at 16?
Yeah.
Just
Getting
think about
my
that.
driver's license.
The first place I ever went to with my driver's license was Dunkin' Donuts, and not much has changed. So let's go back to our story.
On average, you'll have to wait 31 days to see an OBGYN. And if you're dealing with an infection or outbreak, you know you need care fast. That's where WISP comes in. Connect with a U.S. licensed provider online and pick up safe, effective treatment at your local pharmacy that same day. Plus, get birth control and more delivered in all 50 states. Take control with comprehensive sexual and reproductive care, all from your phone. WISP. That's hellowisp.com. The waiting room can wait.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only. Then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
The sisters used their bikes as a tool to carry out many of their resistance operations. It allowed them to deliver messages and execute sabotage missions, like carefully placing explosives on tracks or under bridges to weaken the Nazis' military operations. It also gave them the ability to smuggle people to safety, all while staying under the radar.
In fact, smuggling refugees into safe houses became part of Truus and Freddie's daily routine. These safe houses were often hidden in plain sight, like private homes, barns, and basements. But the real challenge was getting to them. They had to avoid detection from Nazis, collaborators, and spies. Getting caught meant death, not just for them, but for the people they were trying to protect. And they did this all on their bikes, hiding refugees under large blankets, inside bags, or even in the bike frames themselves.
Although they were afraid, their sense of duty overweighed it. Freddie once recalled how she, quote, remembered how people were taken away from their homes and how the Germans were banging on doors with the butts of their rifles. She went on to explain how you'd hear the noise throughout the entire neighborhood and that the fear was louder than anything else.
Despite the constant danger and narrow escapes, their courage only grew stronger, and it wasn't long before they crossed paths with another young woman whose bravery would forever change their lives, Hannie Schaft. Janneke Johanna Schaft, who went by Hannie after she joined the resistance, grew up in the northern part of Haarlem and was known for her bright red hair. During the war, she studied law at the University of Amsterdam with hopes of becoming a human rights lawyer.
Hannie's fight against the regime started with small but impactful acts. This included sending packages of food and other necessities to Polish soldiers imprisoned by the Germans through a Red Cross program. She would also steal ID cards from non-Jewish people and distribute them to her Jewish friends to help disguise them. In 1941, when Jewish people were banned from walking in a local park, Hannie made a simple yet profound choice to also refrain from walking through the park. It was quiet acts of defiance like this that planted the seed for her eventual role in the resistance movement.
In 1943, the Nazis demanded that university students sign a, quote, pledge of loyalty to the German occupation, swearing allegiance to the Nazi regime and its leaders. While many complied, Hannie refused. But her decision came at a cost, and she was forced to drop out of the University of Amsterdam. After this, Hannie moved back in with her parents, bringing along her 2 Jewish friends, Sonia Frank and Feline Polak, to find them a safe place to hide from the Nazis.
This is when Hannie joined the Rod van Verzet, RVV for short, or the Council of Resistance, which was a national overall organization for Dutch resistance groups. One of her first assignments with the RVV was to eliminate an officer from the German secret police. Hannie was terrified, but she took a deep breath and fired her gun, only for the sound of a click to echo. Nothing happened. It was at that moment the officer turned around and introduced himself as Franz Vanderweel, the commander of the resistance group. It was all a test, and Hannie had passed it.
It didn't take long before Hannie met other members of the resistance, including Truus and Freddie. The 3 of them navigated the chaos of the war together, growing an inseparable bond.
I just have to say that we were talking a little bit about small acts of defiance and how they can snowball and create change and grow. And I think the first person that comes to mind for me with that is somebody we all grew up learning about, which was Rosa Parks. But recently I learned about Claudette Colvin. Do you know her story?
Yeah, she was another, I think it happened, a month before Rosa Parks, where she did this essentially the same thing, where she refused to give up her seat and was arrested as well.
Yeah, it was less than a year before Rosa Parks. And I just think that it's those little small acts that in the moment might not seem huge, but clearly we're still learning about the impacts of those however many decades later.
Yeah, and earlier we mentioned in the story where Hannie, the first thing she started with the resistance was she was just helping giving the resistance food and doing small things that meant big things to people who needed it, but in a resistance standpoint was pretty small. She wasn't standing up to anyone. She was just helping support the resistance. And then it snowballed into something much larger than that. And I just have to say also, when you were I gasped when you started talking about how she was tested and she decided to pull the trigger, her first liquidation, and it ends up being, one, the gun doesn't go off. The first thing in your head must be like, oh my God, what is going on? I just really messed up. And then you turn around and you meet the commander. They're like, welcome, you've passed the test.
It's like, I didn't know I was being tested, but thankfully that's done and we can move on, because that was frightening. I mean, she must have thought her life was over. Like, okay, I have no weapon. I just tried to assassinate somebody. That's it.
But it worked out. It worked out. And I just, already this story just has me on my toes.
Clorox Sentiva smells like grapefruit. Cleans like Clorox. And feels like...
Okay, we could be here all day. Try Clorox Sentiva for a trusted clean with long-lasting freshness. Also available in lavender and coconut. Use as directed.
TaxAct knows small business owners can sometimes use a little help with their taxes. That's why TaxAct has Expert Assist, a team of live tax experts ready to answer any questions you may have. Think of them as your own personal sidekick. Not like one of those funny talking animal sidekicks, more like the super smart nerding out on tax code and business casual attire sidekick, but just as helpful and lovable. TaxAct. Let's get them over with.
And on that note, Hannie's work on the resistance earned her a spot on the Nazis' most wanted list, and she became known as the girl with the red hair. Hannie's first major act of resistance took place in November of 1943, when she joined fellow resistance members Jan Boonkamp and Jan Brasser, and another RVV operative in an attempt to sabotage a power plant. Although the mission was unsuccessful, it served as a morale booster that people were fighting to protect. In June 1944, Hannie and Boonkamp were selected to carry out an assassination in Zaandam, targeting Dutch police officer Willem Ragu. Ragu wasn't just any collaborator, he was notorious for his brutality. He was actively hunting down Jewish people, rounding them up, and handing them over to the Nazis. His role in arresting and deporting countless innocent civilians made him one of the most despised figures amongst the resistance. So Hannie and Jan set out to eliminate him.
Once they located him, Hannie shot Raghu in the back of his neck. However, Raghu saw the attack coming and retaliated, shooting and injuring Bonecamp. The mission was completed and Hannie was able to flee the scene, but Bonecamp didn't make it far before he was arrested and taken in by Nazi police. While under their supervision, Bonecamp was given a substance that manipulated him into revealing Hannie's address. This mistake set off a chain of events, making Hannie an identifiable target. Bonecamp died shortly after. That same day, the Germans raided Hannie's home. Although they did not find Hannie, they forcibly escorted her parents to a concentration camp in Voot, a city within the Netherlands.
Grieving the death of Bonecamp, who was rumored to be a love interest of Hannie's, and the capture of her parents, Hannie went into hiding. Her parents were released after 2 months, and Hannie returned to the resistance, this time with wire-rimmed glasses, jet black hair, and a new ID.
Hannie jumped right back into sabotage and assassination missions. On March 1st, 1945, just a few weeks after her return, Hannie and Truus Oversteegen assassinated Willem Zierze, an NSB police officer in Haarlem. This assassination was a significant blow to the Nazi apparatus in Haarlem and marked Hannie's return to action.
And they weren't done yet. Just 2 weeks later, on March 15th, 1945, they targeted Co Longendijk, a hairdresser who had been selling out people to the Nazis. Though Longendijk survived the attack, his betrayal did not go unpunished. In 1949, he was sentenced to life imprisonment. These actions, alongside countless others, cemented the legacy of Hannie, Truus, and Freddie as some of the most courageous and relentless members of the resistance.
I am loving these women. And the fact that all of this is going on with Hannie and she just turns around, dyes her hair, gets a new ID, and is like, I'm back, baby. Let's get back to work. I'm back here.
Yeah, I mean,
incredible.
The persistence, the perseverance is unmatched. I mean, her parents almost lost their lives in a concentration camp. And she still just turned around and said, the work isn't done. And I still have things to contribute. And it's dangerous for myself and those I love, but the mission is greater. And I have a purpose here, and let's do it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it came down to, yes, this is dangerous to fight this and to be part of the resistance, but it's more dangerous to not be a part of it because of what is happening in the world. And she just perseveres through everything. And I just think it's incredible. And not just her, but also Truus and Freddie as well. They're doing some really incredible and scary work for the resistance.
I totally agree.
After a valiant run, Hannie was caught on March 21st, 1945, while distributing the illegal communist newspaper WWII at a military checkpoint in Haarlem. But the newspaper was merely a front. She was actually carrying secret documents critical to the resistance. At the time, Hannie had been working closely with her co-worker, Anna Weinhoff, who allegedly later betrayed her. Following her arrest, Hannie was taken to a prison in Amsterdam, where she endured relentless interrogation and torture at the hands of her captors.
Tragically, it was the red peeking through the roots of her hair that ultimately gave away her identity, and Anna was allegedly the one who turned her in. On April 17, 1945, just 18 days before the Netherlands was liberated, Hannie was led to be executed in the dunes near Overveen, a village close to Bloemendaal. 2 Dutch Nazi officials, known as Matthias Schmitz and Martin Kuiper, took her to the execution site. Schmitz shot her in the head at close range. However, the bullet only grazed Hannie. It's alleged that she exclaimed, "I shoot better," or "I'm a better shot." Kuiper then took out his submachine gun and fired a burst at Schaft, after which she immediately collapsed and died.
The last time Truus and Freddie saw Hannie was before her arrest in March of 1945. The Nazis were closing in on the resistance, and Truus and Freddie could feel it. Freddie even said they all knew, deep down, that it was coming.
Once they received the news that Hannie had been arrested, it hit them that the end was near. After everything they had been through, everything they fought for, to hear that was crushing.
After the war, Hannie was reburied at a cemetery of honor in Bloemendal. In November 1945, she was given a state funeral attended by Queen Wilhelmina, Princess Juliana, and Prince Bernhard, who called her the, quote, symbol of the resistance. She received the Wilhelmina Resistance Cross along with a posthumous Medal of Freedom, which is the highest civilian award in the United States. A statue of her standing as a hero was later unveiled in the honor of her in Canal Park, located in Harlem. Schools and streets were named after her, and a foundation was created in her memory.
After the war, Truus became a strong advocate for preserving the memory of the resistance. She remained in activism and dedicated much of her life to educating younger generations about the sacrifices made during the war, leading speaker events for students. Freddie got married and lived a quieter life. The war had a lasting impact on her, but she spoke about her experiences when it was important to honor the memory of those who fought for freedom. Both sisters passed away at age 92, spending their final years in the Netherlands.
They have been widely recognized since the war and have received several honors. Truus was awarded the Dutch Resistance Memorial Medal, the Medal of Merit, and the Yad Vashem Award for saving Jewish lives. She was passionate about sharing her story and detailed her experiences in a memoir called Not Then, Not Now, Not Ever. She additionally founded the National Hannie Schaft Foundation in honor of her friend. Freddie was also awarded the Resistance Memorial Medal and the Yad Vashem Award. She worked hard to ensure women's contributions to the resistance were recognized, and she spoke out when it was important to honor those who fought for freedom. She served as a board member for Hannie's Foundation.
It's honorable how both sisters continued to educate future generations about their experiences. They truly left a lasting legacy.
And they have such a powerful story. I'm glad that we got to dive into an episode on World War II and explore the bravery of this trio.
It's pretty fitting that we did a World War II episode first, seeing as how that is such a big point of interest for you and such a period in time where you're so drawn to.
Yeah, I've been begging on National Park After Dark to talk about World War II in any capacity. I'm like, how can we get this into the show? And it's just hard because there are national parks that are dedicated and remember World War II stories, but to dive into it in this way was never something that we found so far. So to start Watch Her Cook with a World War II episode of 3 incredible women who stood up against the Nazi regime is really exciting, and I'm really glad that we started the podcast this way.
Chef's kiss. Couldn't have been better. What was like the biggest part of their story that really stuck out to you? I mean, it's hard because their whole story is crazy, but
yeah. How I said earlier, I think their ages really stood out to me a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Hannie, I think, how could we forget this moment where she is put to execution and she is shot, missed, and she turns around and says, "Ha, I'm a better shot."
What a way to go.
What a queen. I mean, in that moment, you are facing your own mortality, your own death, and you're being executed. And you know, in that moment, she had no regrets. She was there. She stood there and she's like, I'd do it again. I don't regret this at all. And I'm a better shot than you.
It sounds like she died like she lived. Brave, not afraid to speak up and speak against those who are doing wrong. And I think that's just, it's a sad and tragic end. And that goes almost without saying, but it really speaks to who she was as a person in life. And I just think that's really cool. But as far as the theme that kind of stuck out to me the most on this is just the perseverance of sticking with it, with so much going on and so many reasons to quit and to throw in the towel and be like, this is too much. I'm just, one person, or I'm just like this part of this tiny group. And it can feel really overwhelming, and it can feel like you're swimming against the current a bit. And these young women who were a part of a larger resistance group, of course, but, they just really stuck with it. And the small acts, like I can't get over that because sometimes it's hard. It's hard to stand up for what's right, even in big ways, but you can always do little things that show your stance and your values and what you stand for. And that just really shone throughout this story.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I also just think, yeah, we can look at these small acts, of course, that turn into bigger things, but they were clearly making waves. The Nazis had a target on their back because they were 3 women that were making really big waves. And clearly they thought that it was necessary to execute Hannie to stop her because she had that big of a role in the resistance. So just because you're 1 or 3 women and you're doing something and this friendship that forms doesn't mean you're not making really big changes.
Do you know what this story really reminded me of? And it's a movie I haven't seen in years, but it's very memorable. The movie Jojo Rabbit.
I don't know if I've ever seen that.
Cassie, you would love that movie. So it's about World War II, and Scarlett Johansson plays a mother to this little boy. And the little boy is the main character of the whole plot. But the mother is in it in a way that she's showing these quiet acts of resistance. She's handing out pamphlets. She is doing little things like these 3 women were doing. And she ended up, spoiler alert, she does pay the ultimate price for that with her life. But you would really, really enjoy that movie.
Is it a true story?
No. It's like a historic fiction type of thing. And I don't want to say it's like a lighter hearted version, but kind of. It's not making a joke out of anything. It's really deep and serious, but there are moments of levity in it. And I think you should really put it on your list to watch, because if you enjoy this story, you're going to enjoy Jojo Rabbit.
Okay, I'll add it to my movie list.
All right. Well, we have a book rec with the memoir, which I think is aptly titled
Not Then, Not Now, Not Ever.
And a movie rec, Jojo Rabbit.
Thanks for tuning in to Watch Her Cook.
If you're looking to dive a little deeper, we've included some sources for you in the description. Let us know what incredible women's stories you'd like to hear next.
And a big shout out to Sick Bird Productions, who produces our podcast and helps bring these stories to life. Don't forget to follow us on Watch Her Cook podcast, leave a review, and subscribe for more inspiring stories. Just a reminder, empowered women empower the world. Now let's go cook. See you next Wednesday.
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/kidsandfamily. Just go to Indeed.com/kidsandfamily right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.